Go. Hey everyone, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez. I'm coming at you with Dr. Kaplan. Psychologist, right? That's what you studied?
Yeah, I studied clinical psychology
Cool beans. And you've been in America for how long?
about 20 years.
Okay, cool. And when you got here, did you know the language?
No.
You did not know
In,
the
in fact, my parents didn't know the language either. So
language.
they were trying to learn English and then they were trying to teach me, which was like a
Like
disaster because
blind leading the blind.
yeah, they just my dad still speaks with an accent to this day. I think I've told you, he sounds like a James Bond villain. You know, hello,
I met him once, yeah.
how you doing? Are you hungry? Yes. Okay. Yeah, so he's a character. But yeah, so my parents didn't know the language, and it was a I went through a whole journey to try to play catch up and you know
Uh,
learn how to speak. And I mean, my
Because you were
first
like
year I
what,
essentially
10,
yeah
11, something like that?
yeah I
Yeah.
just didn't speak. I spoke like gibberish, like it.
And when did you like finally pick it up? Like how long did it take?
uh I learned it pretty quick because I had a teacher named Miss McGarrick,
Hmm.
who actually she was a Russian teacher who worked in a public school that I was going to.
Yeah.
And the way my public school worked at that time, they essentially just took all the kids who didn't know how to speak English, or just the bad kids, and they put them in like these classes where you basically were coloring while the real class was like learning English and science and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so Miss McGarrick actually turned to my mom and was like, "You should sit in and see what your son is doing when the rest of the class is actually learning like the actual things that are going to, get them to, you
To the
know,
next grade and
to the next grade, get that they'll be able to function in high school. There's a whole trickle up effect.
yeah.
Um, and so she actually ended up tutoring me. She said, "Listen, I know there's a whole bunch of logistics as to why like he's not in my class or whatever, but in the meantime, have him come to my house, and I'll teach him how to read." So um, my mom would take her to Miss McGarrick's house, and she had, you know, books organized according to grade level.
Yeah.
So she like walked me through everything, and she was brilliant. I mean, I give her credit for teaching me the language and just giving me an opportunity to, even be able to function like
Yeah.
in
Because so
terms
you
of
got lucky in a
I
sense that
yeah, she changed the whole trajectory of my life. Like, I mean, so Ms. McGarrick, if you're watching this video, thank you. I owe you everything. Like, it was amazing. Like, I wouldn't be in college. I wouldn't be doing classes. Like, are you crazy? Like, I didn't even speak the language. So
what do you
the
think you
fact
would be doing had she not?
probably like construction,
Yeah.
like in Lithuania, like, oh, okay, well, time to pack boxes. Okay, I don't know. Like,
I mean, you would have learned the language eventually, though.
not, I mean, she taught me not only did she teach me how to read, but because she taught me how to read, I developed an interest in writing. So I would like
Okay.
write stories, and like that never would have and then I started reading like science fiction books, and there's a whole thing that happened because she taught me how to read.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean that was I don't know, like whenever I hear people kind of like undermine teachers, like, oh, like that's not, you're just babysitting. I'm just like, you're fucking crazy. Like, I mean, the good one, I mean, the great ones really do have an incredible impact on your life. I know, she did for me, and this was, elementary school. I mean,
Yeah.
middle school years where, she just got like she got to me, and I listened to her because I was not an obedient kid. Like my parents were talking about having kids, and then they had me, and they're like, mm-mm, not no, not anymore. We're canceling these plans. This kid's a maniac. Um, so she was one of the few teachers who like she earned, like, she knew how to get my respect because she was stern but she was fair,
Yeah.
and everything she said made sense, and she didn't take no bullshit. So um we you know I feel like everyone's got at least a teacher like that they could look back on and be like, oh, okay, like this teacher really got to me, or this teacher, you know had an influence on me, even if it's just one. Everyone's got at least one teacher that, oh, I really like this
Yeah.
teacher, I was able to connect with. Um, but maybe not to this extreme level, because I'm talking about this teacher like changing uh, everything.
Did she do
Um,
that for others as well?
I don't know, but I can't imagine that I'm the only one.
Yeah.
But because she was Russian, and she was a Russian immigrant herself, so she knew how hard it was.
She had
And
sympathy towards your situation.
yeah, so and my parents were like barely, they didn't understand the school system,
Yeah.
like they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what classes I was being put in. They never would have
Yeah.
actually known what was going on. And, so, but she was working in the school. And then eventually I started going to her like after school program, where there's all these other immigrant kids and we were all learning. It was really cool.
So, in your opinion, if there was, I mean, I don't know how, if you took any like actual education classes, like for teaching, if you could teach like in like a high school, I imagine you could. Um, but in your opinion, how much of the tax money that goes to public education is like wasted, and what would you do that'd be different if you were in that position, like on the board of ed?
I mean, that's also like getting into the realm of politics, right? And
Yeah.
I would ideally, in my perfect world, I would probably take some money out from like the military budget that we, and even if you take like freaking 5% and put in education, I mean that's millions and millions of dollars that um could definitely reshape the infrastructure of education, because I don't think teachers get paid nearly enough, or I don't know,
It
like
depends where.
yeah, but like I don't know, like I'll think about whenever the topic of teachers comes up, there's always I- you you'll get some pushback from people who will just be, I don't think they give teachers enough credit.
No. I know it's so weird how even in the same county, like in like Nassau County, where we used to live, you have in like Hempstead or West Hempstead, like the average salary for a teacher, or even closer to like Queens, average salary is like 40 something thousand a year. But then you go like 20 miles east, you go like Jericho, or you go someplace that's like on the border of Suffolk County, and you could make like 100 something thousand dollars a year because every few credits after their masters is like a bump in pay. So
Yeah, it's definitely like education's definitely like the more education you have, the more you're eligible to get paid. But in general, education it's struggling, especially public education. It's not Public school education is not thriving in this country
yeah,
overall. There are exceptions, of course. I mean, I've met teachers and known teachers who, they make a decent living, or in rare exceptions they do very well. But overall, it's with everything they have to put up with, I don't think they get enough credit.
yeah, I would not do that. Even if the amount that they would get paid were to significantly increase by a lot. It's just there's some kids that are just like I, probably I don't want to say unteachable, but just a lot more effort than they're worth. I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like I I don't really I don't have a lot of patience for kids, like, and that's funny because I was definitely one of those kids who I wouldn't have patience for, if that makes any sense. Like I would not want to deal with me, as a kid, because I was a lot to deal with. So, and I know that, but I think that a lot of those kids that are, quote unquote unteachable, like there's so much that goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah,
There's so much that goes on at home. Um, like they weren't just born this way. Like there's stuff going on
that
that,
made them that way.
yeah, like I used to work, I mean, while I was studying to become a clinical psychologist, when I was like I was in grad school, so I moved to Philly, and I was working as a TSS, a therapeutic support staff. So I was basically with a autistic kid, and I would basically make sure that he wouldn't run off or trash a classroom, or just basically babysitting this kid, trying to redirect him um, if he got distracted. And you know, there was there were other kids, and there was one kid in that classroom who he was in, I think, second grade, and this kid would curse like he was a 30-year-old. He would say things that no 7, no 8-year-old would know unless they heard it at home.
And it
You
wasn't
know,
like an autistic thing. It was like
no,
a,
it was
oh,
an angry kid.
yeah.
There was clearly, like, he would say things like, "Oh, you only took this job because you're alone and no one will sleep with you."
Did you ever laugh?
I mean, I it was there were times when you laugh, but there's also times when you kind of just it's just so like, man, like, what's going on in your house, dude?
Yeah,
Like, what's going like what like no, you know what I mean? Like, no 7-year-old's gonna say that to you. No one's gonna even know that unless like they heard it, or
yeah,
things like that. So and that's like the tame stuff, I
yeah.
mean, that's not
Gee.
even like the rated R stuff. That's that was And that kid just was, it stopped being funny. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. After a while, it's
It
like, all right.
it stopped being funny because it was like, I looked at he wasn't getting the help he needed, and the trajectory that he's going in, like, it's it's not good,
Yeah,
like, and I don't know what's going on at home, but the teachers didn't know what to do with him.
no,
They didn't know what to do with him, and I don't know what his living situation was at, back at home, but there are those kids where you feel like, oh my God, they're unteachable, but I always think back on like the circumstances that led up to it,
yeah,
because yeah, it's a messed up situation, and I think that's part of the reason why I don't really want to work with kids, because so much of it is like working with adults that are incompetent or just abusive or whatever. And it, it's almost like a lot of times all the work you do or all the progress you make is sometimes it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, because then they go back home and then they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with.
yeah. That's a good point. You said that when you were younger, when you first started to write and get in science fiction, I know you were really into Star Trek. What was going on in the home that made you get into those things? Did your parents have like sci-fi books, or did your mom used to write?
Actually, what it was, maybe I misspoke. I actually got into like fantasy first, like elves
Lord of
and
the Rings.
dwarves and orcs and stuff like that when I was like
Nice.
a 9 year, like so science fiction came later.
Yeah,
But initially it was like, um there was a what really got me into like reading fantasy was an author named R.A. Salvatore, and he writes a series called Forgotten Realms,
yeah,
and there was a book like this big, like huge. It was like 4 volumes of like all these books that he wrote just combined, and it had a really cool cover. It had a dude with 2 swords, going
yeah.
down like this cavern. There's a bunch of skeletons, and so 10-year-old Phil was like, "That's dope. People died there, right?" So I opened it, and every page I opened, it was uh, like I was immediately immersed. I opened one page and it was like just describing them, going through a cavern and there's all these dead soldiers. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm reading, but this sounds awesome. Why are all like, what happened?
Yeah.
So
It's
I
a
ended up,
mystery.
yeah. So I started reading Forgotten Realms, and I got into R.A. Salvatore, and then I became inspired to like write, because I was like, oh man, I want to like write my fantasy novels, things like that. And then in high school, I kind of made the transition to like from like fantasy to science fiction. I started, getting more into that. I think
Yeah,
that was probably just based on like TV shows, and just me starting getting more interested in like, oh, where's technology going to go? And I
Mhm.
became fascinated with future tech that was shitty.
Shit,
Like
wait, why specifically that?
just like it wasn't not even like science fiction where it's like you have a cool laser gun, but like Robocop,
Yeah,
like a muscular toaster with legs, but he's fighting crime, but he's like just, Detroit's a mess, right? And he's just like, his car has bullet holes. It feels lived in,
yeah,
so and then like the catchphrases, and I mean we've talked about this, like I'm a huge fan of all like the 80s and 90s action movies because like I grew
yeah,
up on that. So yeah, definitely like science fiction, like weird science fiction that feels like, oh, this is dirty, this is gross, like people lived here.
yeah,
um I feel like Star Trek's a little, it's fun, but I think sometimes it could be like too clean,
yeah.
like too sanitary, so it's not messy enough for me sometimes.
I think
But
that would be. I think that would make sense. I mean, that in one of the scenarios in one universe where humans evolve that way, or the culmination of intelligent life in the universe evolves that way, in which it is clean, in which it is. I'm not saying that would be perfect or ideal or you would want that, but that's just a possibility.
man, you know what I remember from Star Trek? I remember Seven of Nine. Remember her? I was just like I feel like she came out of nowhere because they were just like the producers were like, all right, we need a hot chick because the ratings are going down. So they got her. They're like, all right, let's get aboard. And then she was like, they like turned her into a human, and then she was like the like logical, like socially awkward, hot blonde who like all the nerds were like just watching it, and it totally worked for me. I was like, who is she? What is going on? Voyager, you've got it going on. Holy crap. Because Janeway looked like she was like butch and, I mean, she was a great character, but
Eye
you definitely
candy.
were you weren't watching her for, for like she had a great personality.
Like if you were on that ship, you'd be friends, and that'd be it.
I'd be scared of Janeway, honestly, because she's like
Yeah.
their boss. She's like
Oh yeah.
she's the boss of a fucking ship. She doesn't want to hang out with me. She'd
That's a
probably
good point.
like dump a bunch of paperwork and be like, fix these fucking droids, human. Like
That's a good point. Oh man, imagine if you were just in this futuristic society, but your entire existence was just down to paperwork. Oh,
I mean,
that'd
it
be
sounds
so
like my
depressing.
life now. So
There's a lot of it paperwork.
a lot of
Well,
it's paperwork, but fortunately, I do get to work with people. So
yeah.
that's definitely, but a vast majority of it is like I do have like an office job, and I'm uh doing things for insurance companies and getting clients covered and things like that. But I do get to, run groups, and so I'm fortunate in that I get to have like the social interaction where I get to, interact with people and work with them. And that's why I got into the field.
Who, whether it be in your personal life growing up, or you were going through your doctorate, or now in work, who comes to mind when somebody asks you who's like the most interesting person you've ever met or worked with, or a group of people?
Uh, most interesting person or group of people that I've worked with. Oh man, that's a load. Okay, so I used to work at an inpatient hospital,
Hmm.
and we had a psychiatrist. Let's just call him Dr. S. Okay.
Okay.
But so Dr. S he was a psychiatrist, so he prescribed medication. He wasn't a psychologist. He prescribed meds,
Okay.
but he was always grouchy, and he was always like he gave off House vibes, like Dr. House. Like he was
Yeah.
grouchy, but he was really smart, and he was very direct,
Did he walk with
and
a cane?
he didn't walk with a cane, but he would say crazy shit, and it was a lot of fun to be around him. He would
Okay.
like he once came over to me, and he was like, "Hey, you're Russian, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I got a Russian wife, and she's a fucking gold digger." And I was just like, I can't believe he just said that, but I love it, you know? And I'm just like, please tell me more, and like it was just fucking awesome. Then I found out from one of my colleagues that Dr. S uh, worked in a different hospital years ago
Mm.
where a guy walked into the hospital with a gun, shot a social worker in the face, walked into his office, and tried to shoot him. I think the guy actually fired off a round and shot him in the hand. He was fumbling in his office and he pulled out his own gun and shot that guy and killed him.
Winning.
Yeah. So, and then the police came and they're just like, we don't know why you have a gun, but thank you. No charges, nothing. And
What
we
state
found,
was that in? Like
I
it
have,
was obviously legal.
it's definitely, yeah, he's definitely, I don't want to blow up his name, but like
Yeah,
I found, I didn't believe it when I heard it. You know what I mean? I was like, this is bullshit.
had to verify.
Um, and then, yeah, I found a news article from a number of years ago where it like said his name, it said the hospital. Um, it was confirmed, and it was just it. I had no idea he
So
like went
either
through that.
the bullet hit him in his non-dominant hand, or he was efficient in both hands, like Chinese special forces. They're taught to be able to fire with both hands. Either way, it's pretty badass.
I'd like to think that he actually fired it with his bad hand because then it would make him more badass.
Yeah,
Because if you're like super, like a ninja with both hands, it's like whatever, dude. All right, we get it.
yeah,
You're special.
that is so cool.
Yeah.
How old is he now? The person.
Oh, he was like in his late 40s when I was
Oh,
there,
okay.
so he might be like in his 50s now,
Okay, so he's not like old. Like that all happened, I guess, relatively recently.
Yeah, but
And
you wouldn't he looks like the most like he looks like an office guy, but he's kind of hefty, but he didn't look like, oh, this is the guy who, who went through that, but he was always like angry and grouchy, so his
yeah.
personality kind of fit.
When you were younger, you mentioned you were reading. It sounds like some sophisticated books for like a when you were young. Did you ever get into anything that was supposed to be for like older people or older kids while you were younger?
Uh, like I got into like 1984,
Mhm.
when I was
Good
like
book.
in middle school. So I read that wasn't even on the curriculum. Like that was just something that I ended up reading on my own. And uh, I was definitely I was interested in it because I was told that it had like some Soviet era-esque type of things, qualities, and I was like really desperate to try to like connect to that in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. So when I read that, that was like I remember like teachers giving me like weird looks, like, do you understand what you're reading? Like, do you, like, are you sure
Yeah.
that this is like not like above your, a little bit too much for you? But no one, teachers didn't give me any problems with reading, like it was like, oh, okay, at least you're reading.
Yeah. No, I remember I was in like ninth grade. I was trying to impress this girl, and she was like a huge Jane Austen fan. So I was trying to, I forget, I think it was Northanger Abbey I was trying to read. And one of my teachers, my English teacher, had like a teacher in training that was shadowing her. And like I hear them talking about me. And like they weren't that far away. They weren't like in the hallway or anything. They were still in like the classroom, but we're all just like doing our own thing. Like, oh, he's reading. Yeah, he's reading. And I didn't know what the fudge I was reading. Like it's just from a different era. It's written by obviously someone that's a product of that era, and every third or fourth word was from like 100, 200 years ago, and it just I was not a special kid. I was very dumb, and that was not my thing. But when you were, what made you go into psychology? Is that a decision made in high school?
Yeah, I made that decision tentatively in high school. Like it was because what happened was in my senior year of high school, they were offering people to take college credits. So I took like 11 college credits my senior year because I
Oh
thought, oh,
wow.
I could save money. I
Yeah.
was like already thinking, which is so uncharacteristic of me because my high school career was so unremarkable. Like I was a solid C student. Like I wasn't really like
Oh,
known
and they let
for.
you take the classes?
yeah, I mean, they were just like, if you want to do it, we're offering it. You know, it wasn't like if you fail, like it's on you. I think you had to pay a certain amount of like I don't know, no, I don't think you even had to pay. I think it was just like if you want to take it, you take it. So there's like an
Yeah,
added incentive where it was just like just do it, it's there, you know. So I took a psychology course that was like added. It was like 2, 3 credits. I don't know how much it was, but I had a, a teacher who just kind of I got into the whole aspect of like the how like your mental health can affect you. I was starting to kind of develop an interest in that. And I had a very limited understanding of it myself. Like, so I didn't understand mental health, so I wanted to understand myself a little bit better.
yeah,
I wanted to understand my parents a little bit better. I wanted to understand people a little bit better than I did. Because I was like, I'm curious if like if there's like a screw loose in my head, you know, type of
yeah,
thing. I wanted to see if like what's going on with me, you know? So it originated from like a more selfish place. It wasn't like, oh, I want to help people. It was more of like, I want to figure out what the hell's going on with me, you know?
yeah,
And then I became really interested in all the, mental health disorders and all the different ways it could look like. And I still didn't get it, but I was interested in it.
yeah,
And I was like, this is cool. So I get to like work with people and try to talk to them. And I was a social kid. I like talking to people.
yeah,
And I was also nosy. So I like to like find out who was dating who and like what? Chad did what? And Terrence? No. Oh my God. So I that's just the perfect combination to get into clinical psychology. If you're nosy about people and you like to interact, I mean, that's a great starting point.
yeah. I mean, a lot of those stories, like I love going like on these podcasts. Your number, I think, yeah, 58. And so some of these are with the same people. Like I'll have some of the same people on,
Yeah.
like multiple times. But a lot of it's just seeing where they, like how they got here, like what brought them to this very moment that we're sharing right now. I think some of the most interesting. This guy Jeremy Pador, he's from I think like Missouri, and he's like didn't have like two nickels to rub together, and just him and his brother found like this old like penny, like an old school penny. It was like worth a lot. Like I think one of them still has it, but they got like sad that they couldn't afford a lot of things, so they started working, making a lot of money. And the dude is like, he's either a billionaire now or he will be very, very shortly. It's insane, like the drive that people can get.
Yeah.
Um,
No, for sure.
yeah. But when you had gone to college, is that when it started clicking? Like, why psychology and not psychiatry? Why not like other? Why this one specifically?
Well, so the seed was kind of planted in 12th grade, so I was like, all right, maybe psychology. And then when I went to community college, a lot of the people I went with thought it was like 13th grade, but
Hmm.
for me, I took it more seriously. I was like, for me, it was more traumatic. I was like, oh my God, like I'm in a community college. If I don't do this right, then I'm going to be like I'm going to have a real job and like washing dishes is going to become a career,
Uh,
so it was more of a wake up call. And I was really trying to think like, do I want to do psychology or sociology? Because I was interested in like cultures and how they develop and things like that. And then I kind of thought about it and I took another psychology course in at NASA and I was like, I really like this. I think I want to do this like as like a real job. And I liked the professors I was having too, so that had an impact.
uh,
Like looking back, they were more personable and they were knowledgeable about what's going on and they were understanding, which was something that I struggled to kind of have. Like that wasn't like a common thing that I came across understanding adults. Um, so that was something that definitely stuck out. And I was like, man, I want to like, I think I want to become a clinical psychologist and figure out how to help people. So it
uh,
started to kind of, or it started to kind of formulate at NASA, like when I was doing my associates, because you get like those first 2 years that kind of bullshit
yeah,
and you kind of experiment. So um, I kind of got to do a couple of different classes in psychology was like again kind of sticking out. I was like, you know what? I think there's something to this. I think I could do this. And the other part of it too is like I didn't have to take any like really crazy classes like chemistry or biology or there wasn't really as much of that. There was like statistics or something like that, which I'd have to take down the line.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
I figure at some point you would have to take that on, because wouldn't that affect psychology a little bit? Like how much, like the nature versus nurture, like how much of that would, like does most of it in your opinion just come from the home? Be like you could be the most perfectly balanced person, but if you get in a messed up home, then you're done.
I really think I think nature nurture is like it's still an ongoing debate.
Yeah.
It's still like no one's got like they know that there's certain characteristics that are genetic, for sure. Like that's just scientific data that they found. Like there's certain things that are just kind of passed down, but then the rest of it is formulated. There's some kids that are like naturally more like they have certain characteristics. Like they might naturally be more aggressive. If they have high energy, they might like be a little bit more rough. You know, there's other kids that might be a little bit more empathetic and sensitive. Because we all have different personality traits. I think it starts like as soon as you're born, you could sort of start to kind of as they're kind of getting older, you start to see it more and more. But
Yeah.
I think a huge chunk of that is how you raise them. And I think I believe they've done studies where if you have a 2-year old who's, let's say they're not very sociable, right? They're aggressive, they push kids, like parents aren't doing anything. You have a very narrow window of shifting their trajectory because if in another 2 years, let's say they're 2 years old, and then by the time they're four, they're still being aggressive and not socializing well with other kids,
No one's gonna play
then
with them.
worse, first of all, no one wants to interact with them because they're not personable, and
Yeah.
they start to live in a world where every adult they see is viewing them with a fake smile. Like because they have to be polite.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, oh that's Tommy, and it's not really. They start to
Yeah.
live in this world where they don't no one trusts them and they don't trust anyone.
That's a
And
good one.
so they've done research where like you have a very narrow window. Most 2-year olds, they there's some socialization skills, there's some interaction, they're not all like this like disaster,
Yeah.
where like they're gonna, they're on this horrible trajectory and whatever, but it is very time sensitive,
Do you think?
because
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
I was just gonna say it's just what these kids internalize happens so quick, in a very short amount of time. So I think sometimes if you have parents who are oblivious to it or like, oh, they'll learn later, it's like th- you gotta catch it early or they're it's harder to change as they get older.
Yeah. Do you think that with the pandemic and having a lot of kids that have parents that are either worrywart, so they're just a little not germophobic, but they're just really taking precautions, always having to wear masks, do you think that's affecting a lot of their development?
I think the pandemic effect like really I think the pandemic fucked up a lot of kids, in
Yeah.
general, because it went from you got to socialize and hang out with people in school and be okay with it to you became conditioned to being home, you
Yeah.
know. And I've worked with kids that have literally they started off with me and they're like, man, I miss school, and then by the end of the year, they're like, man, I don't want to see anybody, I don't need anyone, and then they would start having anxiety when it comes to interacting with other people. There's like an increase, like, oh, like, they're more socially awkward. Um, and you see it with teenagers too. The teenagers who were directly affected by the pandemic. Could you imagine if you're like in 10th grade and then you get pulled out for 2 years, and then all that social interaction is just, it's out the window.
Yeah. And that's like peak, I feel like that's peak socialization where you have good group of friends, where you start dating. And but I also feel like it was kind of on its way there, eventually, because when I first got into the military, everyone like night off or not, hey, let's go drink, hey, let's go party, hey, let's go out and let's do something. And like the last year I was in, and I would go try to grab some of the young guys. All right, let's go to this place. And like, nah, I'm just gonna stay in my room and play Xbox. We'll stay, and it was so I felt like that was happening already even years ago with the younger generation, and then this probably just like multiplied it. I don't know if you've seen any of that as well.
In terms of what multiplied what? I'm sorry.
In terms of the younger generation being a little more introverted and having a little more anxiety of like, oh, I can't order pizza on the phone, and oh, I can't make doctor's appointments for myself, and oh, I like just human interaction. Like I think they even that Seth Rogen movie where he's with that really nerdy kid, and the nerdy kid's like, hey, can you like pay for this candy bar for me? The cashier looks mean, and Seth Rogen's, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Like that was a very like it's a ubiquitous enough problem where it made it into a Seth Rogen movie, and he was poking fun at it.
Okay.
Um, that's just the way I saw it. And maybe it's just it was always there, but now because of social media, all like the anxiety people are on there. So that's just my
I,
take.
yeah, I mean, I've definitely, I'm just speaking from like my experiences. I've worked with kids who turn around, teenagers who've turned around and said like, I think COVID really screwed me up. They
Yeah,
were very blatant about how they felt, and it makes sense too. I think there's even before the pandemic, there were always like introverts and extroverts. Like there's just some kids that were more like I don't want to deal with people.
yeah,
Um, I think I went through a phase like that for sure.
yeah.
Like I definitely in high school, like for an extended period of time, I was just like, man, I don't feel like I want to interact with people today. Um, but I think the pandemic really screwed up a lot of kids because there were kids who really enjoyed school or enjoyed the social component of it, or like seeing your friends was like an exciting thing. And they went
Yeah.
from that to looking at their four walls, and you stop doing something for a year, year and a half, 2 years, like it starts to become scary again. Like, oh shit, like how do I like what does this person think of me? Or um I mean hell, it's even affecting adults too, you know? But like I know um like after the first year of COVID, I think we went to see a friend in New York or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was like a barbecue cookout, like in the backyard. And I
Yeah.
remember being like, how does this work? Do I pick up the food and sit down first? Do I talk to people? I was like trying to play out the mechanics of like without being socially awkward because I didn't want to be
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just gonna eat food without talking to them first, or
Yeah.
how does this work? Which sounds silly, because it's something that should just come naturally. And at that point, at this point, you should just know. But I
Yeah.
remember being more awkward, and I noticed other people at the party were doing the same thing. They're like turning around and looking and like, picking up their plates and putting them down.
You got to be the first one. You got to be the
Yeah,
first one to go and bite that bullet. I've seen
yeah,
posts
well,
from people that are just like, yeah, I sat with like a half-eaten or just like an apple pit in my
yeah,
hand because I was too awkward to go get up and throw it out. It's like, oh man, that's got to be
yeah.
so distracting. Got to
But
suck.
it was also cool because we were all kind of in the same boat, uh, that specific environment. So I think we all ended up like, becoming less anxious as the the party went on. You just kind of were like, okay, like we're all kind of being a little awkward, so it's okay.
Well, you also get a few
um
drinks in you, and then things are fine afterwards.
yeah, it's true too.
So when before you were saying about you wanted to know what things that maybe might have gone wrong in your head, I had put in the title about that we would be talking about a couple different things, and comedy is one of them. You're one of the funniest people like I've ever met, and I'm surprised that like comedy never like struck you as like a thing, like, oh, maybe I could do that, or maybe it has. But when you were younger, or when you started studying psychology, did you figure out why you had some of these crazy like rants or had some of these crazy things that you would post, and they're all hysterical, but that's got to come from a place that's where your mind has to go there.
Yeah, I mean, so like I didn't join Facebook until like 2009. Like I was
Yeah,
kind of late to the party. And you have to understand, like, I think the first like 6 years of like my Facebook account was just I viewed it as a place where I could just project all my insanity onto the platform. Like I could just say whatever the fuck I wanted, whenever I wanted, and I did not give a fuck. I started so many fires on Facebook. Um, I've pissed off so many people. I've started like 100 thread posts, like where like, I would have to scroll, like my thumb would get sore from scrolling, so, I would I would argue from a perspective I didn't believe in. I would, just to piss off people, I would immediately find another post and change my, argument to what I actually believe.
yeah,
Um, so it was just a fun space for me in the beginning where you could just say whatever you want. And I like I told you before, I liked writing.
yeah,
So then I also was able to express all the crazy things I had going on in my head and just say something, something stupid. Or
yeah,
I definitely could like never run for political office. I'll tell you that. Like that's never gonna happen. Like because
yeah.
you don't have to look far. To this day, like I'll be on Facebook and they do like, hey, remember this from like 10 years ago that you posted? And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe I posted this. I can't believe I, didn't get like canceled or
I got a couple of your rants screenshotted. They're so funny.
yeah.
Um, and
I
every now
used
and
to
then,
be I used to be funny, but now I'm a dad, so now,
you're not
it's
funny anymore.
not funny anymore now. It's over.
I feel like, I don't know, man. Like, I was just watching Modern Family. It's like
Yeah.
one of the whitest shows, but it's so good, so good. And like, I feels that the Phil that's on there is a different type of funny because he's like awkward and like nerdy-ish, and they're more like outlandish and crazy the way he speaks sometimes, or what you used to, I guess. Um,
I mean, I still have like a lot of, I still have thoughts that are pretty outlandish. I just don't post them on Facebook anymore. It's
yeah,
not really because it's like now it's become like this thing where it's like I don't know, it's just not as fun. Like now it's like you don't even have to try to piss people off.
oh yeah, no,
It's like I don't even have to. It's like it's just there. Like
yeah.
you could literally you could just share what you really think and people would get upset.
Yeah.
But
You
every
also get
once,
banned now.
huh?
You get banned now pretty easily.
Yeah, there's that, but I've never been like scared of Facebook banning me because I'm not like well known or anything, and
Uh,
I've never had that problem. But I've known a lot of people who got banned for really stupid things.
uh,
I have a really good friend of mine who he lives in Texas, and he got banned from Facebook because he made a post about being someone who stole his own identity. you know like he was pretending that he stole his identity and he was someone else, and Facebook banned him, and he was like, I don't understand how that was offensive, like.
I had this one post where, and I, and it was weird that the one about women wasn't banned. It was the one about men. Um, I had a dear, and it took a couple days to get banned. I had a dear men post where, it was like a couple years ago. I was dating this girl, Ariana, and beautiful girl. But she wasn't like small though. She wasn't like 5'1" and like 100 pounds. She was like 5'10", like 150, whatever. And she was like sitting on like the windowsill, just like looking out at the hotel. So like I picked her up and then like just threw her on the bed. She's like, "Whoa!" I was like, "Oh, you all right?" And she's like, "No, just like no one's ever like picked me up like that." I was like, "Well, you're in your 20s. Like imagine you've been dating for like quite a while, and even when you were young, like nobody's ever like picked you up." And I that struck a chord with me. And nobody, there were a couple of other girls that I had dated that had also said that. So I made a post like, "Dear men, y'all need to start working out because like I've had too many girls tell me that that they've never been picked up. They've never literally been swept up off their feet." And it was like a day or two later. after I'd made like a Dear Women post, and it wasn't like none of them were meant to be offensive, and I got banned. Like a couple people reported it. Like it wasn't that long of a ban. It was like for 7 days, but it's ridiculous. Just because I told men to work out.
What a bunch of cunts.
Exactly, exactly.
It's just fucking annoying, man. It's just like, I don't know. I'm gonna say something controversial. What a bunch of betas.
Do it. It's good. Um, I've been relatively tame on Facebook since then. Like
Yeah.
I have a bunch of stuff that I've already posted like years ago, like on the memories, like I'll screenshot or I'll send to like a group because I want to animate them because they're really crazy. They're really outlandish. Um, one of them was I made a character not based off you, but one of the stories was where remember you needed someone like in the military and you need like the ID, you need like a crazy story. So this one girl, this one, her name's Kim, but I called the character, I based the character Patty off of her,
Okay.
and she's in the military with me, but she in like the stories, like she's like a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever.
Yeah.
And like she used to in the story, she used to work at like Wawa, because that would help her like do something really like meaningless and like that, so where she could study while going to school and
Yeah.
get paid. And during like her dissertation or her whatever, she had to do something on me, like a study report. But then it was about to get published, and then it was really. I'll send it to you. It was really stupid, but it was really funny, and
No,
you'll know exactly which I was talking about.
I like stories,
Yeah,
and I definitely I have a like that same friend that got banned for joking about stealing his own identity. He
yeah,
has like some of he you think my posts were funny, his posts were hilarious. They were hilarious. I read them. I when I was working at a community corrections place, I was sharing an office with like an older guy, and I
mhm.
would go through his posts and I'd read him, and we would cry in the office together, two grown men crying like children. We were crying, we were beat like hitting the table, laughing, crying. I couldn't finish the post without. I mean, this kid's brilliant. He's like the funniest kid I know.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So there, some people are just gifted, man.
yeah,
They're really good at just extracting the crazy out of their head and putting on a paper or on a screen and making it come to life.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they were so good. I started saving them on my Facebook. So I
Oh,
have like a
good.
whole bunch of things
Please send
on
some of
my.
those to me.
Oh, for sure, you'd love them.
I would. Uh, so over the past several weeks, there has been a lot of conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
Oh yes, there has.
What has been, as someone that's from Russia, what has been like your take on it? Is Putin just being like a dumb like gangster with too much power? Is this a tactical maneuver just to get Eastern Ukraine? Does he want all of Ukraine? What's your take on it?
So I've actually given this a lot of thought,
Hmm.
uh, because I'm from Russia and Ukraine is pretty close to home too. Like my cousin's half Ukrainian. So I think that I don't think the narrative that Putin's an idiot or like a stupid thug is accurate. I
Hmm.
think that there's the reason that Putin's doing what he's doing, from a geopolitical perspective, makes a lot of sense. And let me explain what I mean by that. Back when Russia was part of the Soviet Union, Ukraine was part of it. Ukraine was part of Russia. It was this massive, massive territory.
Yeah,
And during that time, Russia built a lot of pipelines, gas pipelines across Ukraine that would reach out and connect to all the Western European countries.
yeah,
Now, when the Soviet Union collapsed and Ukraine became independent, all those gas pipelines were now they're Ukraine, and Ukraine turned to Russia and said, "Well, now we're going to tax you for it.
yeah,
We're going to make you pay an exponential amount of money to use our pipelines." It was so bad that Russia actually built its own uh, gas pipelines from um, they build it under the Black Sea and through somewhere else directly to Germany.
Yeah.
Okay, to completely bypass Ukraine. And just to explain what I mean, how important this is, I read a statistic that said that Russia's uh like in terms of like profits, gas accounts for about 30 to 50% of Russia's economy. So it's massive.
Yeah.
It's a massive, massive piece of their economy. It's actually one of the things that, um, like, I mean, if anything were to threaten that, it would threaten the infrastructure of the entire Russian government.
Yeah. I
So
remember in 2014, they were vehemently opposed of any U.S. or any other intervention in Syria because the plan was to build a pipeline from Saudi Arabia through
yeah,
Syria to Europe to undercut Russia. Russia's like, absolutely not.
but so it doesn't end there. So Ukraine has some gas deposits, and it also has a lot of these like gas infrastructures that just never got completed. Ukraine on its own didn't have the manpower, the resources to extract a lot of natural gas. They just didn't. But
Hmm.
then they started to hire Western gas companies like Shell, who started to shift their infrastructure and actually develop and extract a massive amount of natural gas to the point, because Ukraine has a lot of it, it was on its path to becoming a real petrostate. Okay, so it would rival, it would become like the maybe the second biggest, Eastern European country to with gas exports. Now to Russia, that's a disaster.
Yeah.
That's an economical disaster because now Germany's like, well, I don't want to deal with you. Now there's a legitimate competitor.
Yeah.
I'll just do it through Ukraine. So I definitely think um, that's a big reason as to why Russia has been, uh, first of all, does not like actually scared off the Western companies so that they all left and Ukraine was back to, its old ways where just it couldn't extract a massive amount of gas. But also it's a big reason as to why Russia doesn't want Ukraine to become part of NATO because it
Wait,
used
they're
to
not
be
part of NATO now?
Ukraine.
Yeah.
No, they're not part of NATO.
Oh, okay. That's right.
No, they're not. But they want
Oh,
to
the
be.
European Union they're at, right?
I'm not sure they're part of the European Union, maybe, but I know they're not part of NATO.
Yeah.
I know that so the other big thing is that uh, Putin is completely opposed to Ukraine ever being part of NATO because
Yeah.
NATO is composed of all those Western European countries and the United States who he views as rivals.
Yeah.
Okay, NATO is a direct rival to him. This goes back to when it was NATO versus the Warsaw Pact, and the Warsaw Pact were like puppet states that Russia used, but then they eventually got overtaken by NATO. So there's an
Yeah.
expansion. If you actually look at it over the years, like NATO's expanded a lot.
Yeah.
It's expanded a lot.
I
Okay,
think two more states or two more countries want to go into. I think it was like Finland and somewhere else. Maybe Kosovo. But
maybe.
yeah, yeah,
But yes, but if you look at the trajectory, if you look at it from a geopolitical standpoint, NATO's been expanding further and further east, and Russia's kind of looking at this and being like, holy crap! If they take Ukraine, if Ukraine were to become part of NATO, that would be a national disaster for them because now it would be digging really deep into their territory.
yeah,
And so they're vehemently opposed to them ever joining NATO. But I think one of those are the two main reasons that um, Putin is actually. The other thing I wanted to say that I forgot is if Ukraine became part of NATO, one of Russia's closest allies right now is Belarus. Okay, to the
mhm.
point where you could almost consider Belarus part of Russia.
Yeah. They
They
use
get
them as
along.
like a staging troops for
Yeah,
the
like
yeah,
because they're and that's like a I'll get into that a little bit as well. But if Ukraine were to become part of NATO, then Belarus would be surrounded by NATO forces.
yeah,
Okay, to the I believe it's to the north, west, and south would be NATO, and to the east would be Russia.
Yeah.
So Belarus would not be in a good spot, especially if NATO had any plans on like, contacting Belarus and trying to
Yeah.
sway them. Um, but anyway, uh, I think those are big components as to why Putin doesn't want Ukraine to ever join NATO. And I think um, the natural gas is another big component as to why he's actually really waging this war, this real conflict. Um,
So,
so yeah.
so what do you think will? Do you think he'll, like when he annexed Crimea? Do you think he'll just take part of Ukraine, or do you think he's going after the whole shebang?
Well, it's interesting too because he actually took over Crimea because it had a lot of natural resources like and they're like I don't know if I'm confusing this stat with somewhere else, but I think there's like 200 tons of like some sort like natural resources that were uh like off the coast of Crimea. So,
Okay.
and it's also a really valuable port.
Yeah.
Crimea is a very valuable port because it could allow Russia or Ukraine or whoever to expand further south
Yeah.
to all the other nations. So it's a but the other thing is that Crimea used to be connected to like a water well that goes up to Ukraine. And once Crimea got taken over, the Ukrainians actually filled their end of the well with cement. So Crimea has been drying up. In fact, it's cost Russia millions and millions of dollars every year just to like basically keep Crimea on life support.
Oh
Like
man.
getting water into Crimea has been a massive undertaking, and it's
Ooh.
literally costed thousands of not thousands, millions of dollars. And I wouldn't be surprised if Putin was making plans to overtake southern Ukraine
Yeah.
because I think he wants to, make Crimea viable again too. Like that would make, from an economical standpoint, and first of all, he'd save money. And the other reason that I think that it's not a reason, but it's definitely a component, is that Russia it doesn't have a very high population.
Yeah.
It's been decreasing ever since the Cold War. It's been their
Oh, all right.
populations, yeah, it's not good. So I think Putin's aware of those numbers, and he's realizing that I don't have a lot of people in my country, so it's only going to get worse with time. So if I could take over Ukraine, first of all, that's a boost in manpower and your population, but it's also just a massive uh, boost in resources.
Yeah.
And
Tax
it also
revenue.
yeah, and it also completely changes the political landscape between NATO and uh, and Russia. Because then Russia feels like, okay, now we're kind of pushing back finally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not. That's not to say I'm definitely sympathetic to the Ukrainians. I'm not justifying the Russian
Yeah.
invasion of Ukraine. Um, I'm just saying I understand from a geopolitical. If you're cold and ruthless and calculating like Putin,
Yeah.
he's playing it smart.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. But I definitely have a lot of empathy for the Ukrainians and what they're going through. And you know, uh, again, it's a conflict that hits really close to home. I mean, my family has friends in Ukraine. I have family that's Ukrainian. So it's a
Yeah.
it's just it's been disappointing. I'm just I've been disappointed by the conflict. That's why I've been doing a lot of research into it and uh, have had so much interest, invested in it because I'm from there.
Yeah. I talk about it not every, yeah, pretty much every day on either the daily video or on the podcast at night, where I go because I was engaged years back. This girl named Natasha, and she was half Ukrainian, half Russian. Her mom's from Ukraine, and she was there in 2014 when they started doing like bombings into like Donetsk and Lugansk, and one of like her friends died, and she like so yeah, I see both sides of it. I definitely don't agree with. I feel bad for the Ukrainians that caught in the middle, but where Eastern Ukraine wanted to be kind of like independent, and
Yeah.
then Ukraine's like, no, we're gonna like starve you out, force you to be part of us, and then Russia comes in. They're basically forcing them to like into Russia with open arms, or it's like, oh, we'll help you, we'll give you aid, and they'll play like the good guy. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Russia has a like a pretty renowned tactic of and they've done it with Ukraine too. They've done it in this conflict as well. They did it back when they were when they had the whole conflict in Georgia back in 2008.
yeah,
Um, so what they did was they took like two cities in Georgia and they're like, hey, we identify you as sovereign nations. But and so they're like, okay, does that mean you're not going to bomb us? And he's like, yeah, yeah, you're good. And then he sends troops into those cities, and you know, has a base of operations. And then he just basically recycles all the government bodies out and switches. If they're not pro-Russia, he'll switch them for
yeah,
with Russians or people who are pro-Russia, and it'll essentially become part of Russia.
yeah. I
Um, and
remember
I
that.
and he's doing the same thing with Ukraine, where he identified um, two cities or what I don't remember. I'm pulling a blank right now, but
Yeah, no, I get it.
yeah. And then he's like, oh, okay, like you guys are sovereign nations. I identify you as separate from Ukraine. Then he sends troops there, and then it's a matter of time before now he has control. Now he has troops on the ground there. So um, it's an old tactic that he's been known to use, and he's using it again.
Effective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very effective. Yeah,
um,
because then it's like, can you imagine if you're like a little city or whatever, and then Russia comes around and says, "Hey, we recognize you as you being your own thing," and you're, oh, okay, just whatever you say, just don't kill us. Okay, well, we're gonna send Russian troops to like patrol your streets. Okay, just don't kill us. And then
yeah,
that's because they're not. It's almost like we'll do whatever you say, just don't bomb us and don't do what you're doing to the rest of the country.
yeah. No, agreed. Where do you see the peace talks going next week? Do you see like Minsk agreements part three? Do you see a diplomatic solution, and do you think Putin will, if he doesn't like the way the negotiations are going, that he might go into, or if he does like the way they're going, would he go into other NATO states? Would he go into like the Baltic states, or does he know that this is enough? This is towing the line as much as he can.
I think that I don't know how I don't think anyone really knows how far he's willing to go with Ukraine.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going past Ukraine. Not right now.
yeah,
I mean, this is a massive, massive undertaking. Um, it's proving to be very expensive. Ukraine is putting up much more of a fight than he anticipated.
yeah.
So I don't think he's actually planning on, like invading the plant. I think he realizes that even taking over all of Ukraine could be a massive undertaking. Like even that
Yeah.
could be that there's no guarantee that's going to work. But I definitely think I don't know if you've heard Putin's demands. You know,
I haven't. What are they?
I think he's had three recent demands, and these might have changed. I haven't been. I don't live for politics, so I'm sure
Yeah,
I might have missed something or changed or whatever. But the last time I checked, was he wanted insurance that Ukraine would never ever become part of NATO. That was one.
I don't know how you can
Uh,
assure that.
then he wanted all of the NATO forces to retract back to like back when like it was to basically move all their military operations and all their forces all the way back in the days when it was NATO and the Warsaw Pact. So Russia has that buffer, and
Yeah,
all those nations in the middle are kind of defenseless now.
yeah.
They're just sort of like open hunting ground. Um, and he also wanted to ensure that if any of the NATO nations ever wanted to conduct military operations, they would only do it if like with they wouldn't be able to do it without his explicit consent. So if they
Mm,
wanted to like patrol the borders or do some shit like that, like so he's like, look, this is not gonna fly unless you talk to me first, type of deal.
well,
Um, I think Putin knows that's not gonna work. These are very extreme demands.
Yeah.
He has to know that's not feasible. That's not actually going to work.
Shoot for
And
the
I,
stars, but land on the moon type of deal. And like,
yeah, he's definitely. I don't think they're gonna. I think he's going for Ukraine. Right now.
yeah,
I think he's at least going to try to. I think he's kind of observing like how's the rest of the world responding. It's like, oh, you're just going to sanction me. Well, then, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. You guys have been trying to sanction me for years. Like, fuck,
yeah,
do I care? Um, it doesn't mean that Russia isn't hurt by the sanctions, but it does. Putin might be of the mind that like, well, if you're going to sanction me, then I have to take over Ukraine.
yeah.
In order to make this viable, I have to secure its borders.
I mean, they're
Um,
also sending a lot of munitions and a lot of vehicles and a lot of aircraft to Ukraine. Like it's kind of like fighting. It's like Charlie Wilson's war. They're giving them all the supplies, and it's kind of like fighting Russia without fighting Russia.
yeah, I mean, and I think that's prolonging the conflict.
Yeah,
I've heard reports, and I don't know how accurate this is. I mean, this is, again, this is something I've heard like third hand, so it's not as, it might not be as reliable, but I've heard that there's been reports of uh captured Russian soldiers by Ukrainians, and um they're not being tortured, but when they were questioned, they said we thought we were going to a military exercise, and then they brought us here, and we don't want to do what we're doing, but these are our orders, type of
yeah.
thing. But
Saw that on Twitter.
yeah, I think I saw something like that. But then I'm thinking, if you're a Russian soldier and you just got captured by Ukrainians, like you're not going to say you came here knowing what was going on, and that you're pro
Yeah.
killing Ukrainians. That's not the smartest move.
I mean, I've also seen, and again, I don't. These might be well traveled, but I've also seen some translations, if they are 100% accurate, say that a lot of these soldiers that have been going in this first wave are like fresh, brand new soldiers. Like they're not battle hardened. Like they're not older people with experience. They're a lot of younger people. Um, again, I don't know how true that is, but it could be just people that just don't know what the heck they're doing.
It could be, and I it really depends like how long Putin wants to prolong this conflict, you
Yeah,
know. But I am, my thoughts are with Ukraine for sure. I definitely think it's super fucked up what's going on there, and it's a it's just a really messed up conflict. You know, it's a just a seeing all the everything they're going through now. It's really disheartening.
yeah.
Yeah,
Markets have been taking a dump also. I mean, they've rallied a little bit the last few days. I don't know if you have any investments or paid attention to like Moscow's exchange.
I've
Um,
heard that their investments have tanked, and but um, I also don't know if they have loop arounds. If they've uh, I'm curious if Putin anticipated the sanctions and all this other crap kind of going down. I can't imagine he hasn't. I can't imagine that a guy like him would just not think this through.
yeah.
And the other thing I'm thinking about is, he might feel more comfortable doing this. I'm curious, and I don't have any proof of this, or, there's no research that I found to indicate this. This is just something I've thought about, is if he does have some sort of secret alliance with China,
Oh, I'm sure. I mean,
where
part of
like,
the BRICS nations, and they. I
if
think,
things, yeah,
yeah, I think China bailed them out once too, with like the rupee was like crashing, and China's like, "Oh, we'll prop up your currency."
yeah. So I think I know Russia and China have been more friendly than China and the US um, over more recent years. So it's it's definitely it's a more personal conflict for me
Yeah.
for obvious reasons.
Have did you ever give any thought about, because I don't know if you still do. You used to work out a lot. Like you used to be very, very, very fit. And I hope you still like, you still like, you don't have like a chunky face or anything. You still look pretty good. Have you ever thought about going into like the military when you were younger, or just like, nah, bam, not for me?
I definitely like first of all, I don't work out the way I used to, and I'm not in the same shape I used to be. Kids will change that, you know. Uh, so um, or at least for me, I'm sure there's exceptions. If you're really motivated, you could do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely I was actually considering to join the U.S. military while I was in NASA. When I was in NASA, I was definitely considering to join. I was thinking like I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was starting to kind of figure out whether I wanted to do psychology or sociology, but
Yeah.
the Marines was definitely like something I thought about. I thought about like I at that point when I was like 18 years old, I was more impulsive, and I was also thinking like what I wanted to be like 10 years from now.
Hmm.
And I don't know why, but like the thought of being like a badass Navy SEAL just appealed so much to me,
Like
or
a
like
lot of Steven Seagal movies.
just a badass military commando,
Yeah.
but um then I got into NYU and I was like, all right, well, this seems like a more rare opportunity. Let me just try this.
Yeah.
So that was that kind of changed. I don't want to say it changed the trajectory, but I was definitely considering it. It was something I was thinking about very seriously.
Yeah. I remember you being uh in really good shape. I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was your main thing.
Yeah,
I think.
I was definitely into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I was trying to combine that with lifting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember this, but I went through a phase where I really liked benching. Um, so I had like a more developed chest, and my arms were like not as like my chest was more advanced than the rest of my body. So I was like, all right, I need to change. I need to like start because I kind of fell in love with that exercise, and I was like, all right, I'm giving this too much attention. I have to like make myself more proportionate again.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like when you get an uneven tan and like you're wearing like a cutoff shirt and your arms get tan, the rest of you is white. Like, oh, I'll go to the beach and even this out.
I was thinking it's more like those guys who have like a really muscular upper body, but their lower body's like twigs,
I
chicken
so
legs.
my friend Jackson has this he's like muscle man, bodybuilder type guy, and
Yeah.
so like we work out together and he's obviously like a million times stronger, but um like I and it's not like I've been like sitting on like the bench like not doing anything. So I do work out, but like he got one look at my calves and he got me a shirt called Team No Calves because they're like they're like this. And I've tried. Like I still work out legs minimum twice a week. But I was like I think a lot of it's just genetic. Like I talked to a couple people about it, and my one friend Casey's like, "Yeah, dude, I took steroids for like 2 years and my calves didn't grow at all." I was like, okay, all right. So I know it's not just me. I know it's not just that, but I am exactly that guy that you were talking about with a slightly bigger upper body and just no, it just sticks there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really in good shape right now because I haven't been working out the way I used to, so
Yeah,
it hasn't been as much of a priority, even though, I'd like it to be one day again.
yeah. Well, how old's your kid now?
Oh, he's 4 months.
Okay, so all right. So it's still. Oh, so you're like not getting a lot of sleep. Like it's
No,
still in.
yeah, he's still like waking up in the middle, he might wake up in the middle of the night or
Yeah,
things like that. So I'm not getting the most steady amount of sleep, and like a tantrum's just like, it could happen whenever. It's
I've
like
I've
a nuclear red alert could happen. We could drop the nukes whenever now. So
yeah.
that's what it feels like with my son. You just don't know when he starts crying, and it's just me and my wife are just like, oh God, no,
I all of the friends that I have that have had kids this past like 10 years or whatever. It's like the same thing. For the first like 6 to 9 months, they're just like they're zombies. They don't they don't sleep. They kind of go to work. They're just drinking as much coffee as they can, try to get as much sleep as they can, and then after that, it's like, oh yeah, kids sleeping like 6 hours a night now, and they're like
yeah,
they're
no,
golden after that.
yeah, no, my kid now sleeps like 10 hours. Uh, but he's got like a weird schedule where he'll sleep from like 5 5 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So um it's like I know that when I come home I'm gonna wake up at I have to go to sleep earlier because I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. and I have to, feed my son.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Um, Apologize if I'm cutting into your sleeping time because I know you don't get
Uh,
too much of it.
that's all
Okay.
right. I agreed to this. I'm an adult. I made a decision.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, what is your work schedule like? Because you're getting out of the office at like 8. What's your schedule like?
It's I'm working like 12 to 8.
Okay.
Um, so I get like the mornings I at least get to hang out with the wife and the kid.
Yeah.
Um, and it's nice because I could if like I stay up a little bit late, um, I just have to know that sometimes I'll work out a deal with my wife where I'll be like, all right, like I'll I'll make the milk, I'll make the formula, but then after I do that, you feed them and just give me some extra time to sleep because I
Yeah.
I don't want to like go to work and not be able to function.
Yeah.
And then we'll change depending on who's more tired. My wife might turn to me and be like, "Listen, like, could you take the middle of the night shift because I'm exhausted?" And
Yeah.
so it's a collaborative effort.
No, I get that. I don't I can't do because if I did, I would need to amass a large amount of money first so I could get like a nanny because I need sleep, man. I I've done it several times where I didn't have sleep, and I never care to do that again. That is like you guys are my heroes that are doing that. That is not my raison d'etre.
You
Um,
know what? You want to hear something weird?
yeah.
I've always wanted kids. Like even as like a kid myself, I always kind of like thought like, oh, one day I'll be a dad. One day I'll have my life together and have kids.
How
Um,
many do you want? Do you want like a baseball team? Like load up the minivan. Let's go get this bread.
I, you know, I'd like two at least.
Yeah.
I think two is a good number. Two or three, three if I'm like, financially secure enough and I feel like, all right, I could do this. And obviously if like depending on we're playing it by ear too. Like we're raising our first son together. We want a little bit of time, a little bit of buffer time between we, the possibility of trying again. But me and my wife have talked about it. We've wanted like at least two, three kids. Um, but we'll see what happens. I mean, like I know my parents, they were talking about like having like two, three kids and they had me and I grew up a little bit and they were like, no, no, we have to end the lineage now. Like this is cut the brakes. We can't have two of these.
Yeah. I know the dynamic would obviously change if like you know two brothers could play a lot together with brother and sister at some point. Guy will probably be in the video games, girl will probably be in the dot, and they'll diverge. So that probably does come with its own unique challenges. With
I mean, what do you call it? I think it's like impossible to predict, because it's so different. Like my my wife and my brother-in-law, so her brother, they have a like almost 10 like a 12-year difference. Like there's a
Mhm.
decade between them and they're super close. They get along super great, and like it's funny because they'll actually end up watching like the same YouTube videos without even knowing about it. It's super cool.
Oh, whoa.
Like they don't talk about it, but that's not like they're communicating regularly. But then
Yeah,
when they'll meet, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I was watching like whatever, like this guy, doing a review of Fallout video games," and her brother will be like, "Oh my God, me too. I watched that guy too." So it's like it's weird. I do a double take sometimes when that happens, but so he's like my brother-in-law now is like he's 20.
yeah,
He's like he's in a completely different point in his life, but he's a super cool guy,
yeah,
really down to earth, and yeah, like again, like I don't think you could predict what siblings are going to be like. It's such a shit show.
yeah. No, I get that. That's I would. I was only child, but one of the and I didn't really get it until I watched like Legend of Korra. I don't know if you've seen like the sequel to Avatar. Um, on
You want to
Netflix.
hear something sad? I've always wanted to watch Avatar, like the cartoon,
You
and
never watched Avatar?
I never watched Avatar.
Oh my God! All right, it's on. It's if it's not on Netflix, it'll be on Paramount.
Okay, I have
You,
Paramount.
okay, well, it's either or. It's either one of them. It is
Okay,
so good. It is. I've
I
seen
s-
that whole run like 5 times.
I know they have like the Fire Nation, which is pretty cool. I automatically was drawn to the Fire Nation because I'm like, they burn shit. They're gonna be
The
badass.
the
They're
bad
gonna,
guys. Yeah.
well, of course, they're the bad guys. They're fire. Like, I mean, it's not gonna be the water, the water monks.
Um, in the sequel, Legend of Korra, that they have, there's these two. There's like this group of like older kids, but then they like their parents. They're in like their 40s. So I don't know if they should still be acting like this, but they're both benders, and they have it out, and they like are throwing giant rocks at each other, and they're not just like, oh, let me just throw them off balance. No, they're going for damage. They're going to like smush their sibling into another rock, and they want them hurt. They want them. And then of course, like, shouldn't we stop this? And then one of her friends like, you don't have brothers and sisters. Like, you don't real like this is what has to happen in order for like balance to be maintained afterwards. I was like, whoa, I never knew that because I didn't have any brothers or sisters.
I'm in a similar boat. I definitely, yeah. So I grew up as a single child myself too. So I didn't have like a lot of context into like how to interact with kids too. Like, so I'll tell you a funny story. When I first like was like in the very beginning phase, this was like even before I started dating my wife. We were like just kind of starting to hang out type of
Yeah,
thing. I remember she was like, listen, I have to go get changed, but you can come into my house. It's cool. Like just hang out in the living room. Right. So I go into I'm waiting for her in the living room, just hanging out, and I see something move off to like the corner of my eye, and I turn around and it's her like 10-year-old brother at the time. Right.
yeah,
So he's like this little 10-year-old boy. And I have like no context of like how to interact with 10-year-olds because it's been so long. Like I'm an only child.
yeah.
I haven't been around 10-year-olds in forever. At that point, I'm like 20. Um, I'm like 23 or whatever. And I'm just like, "Hey, little guy, how are you?" And he walks over to me and says, "If if you mess with my sister, I'll fucking kill you." And I was just like, that was like the first thing he said. And I was just like, damn, look at him being man of the house. Look
That's
at him.
awesome.
That is fucking dope as hell.
Is that what you said to him? Is that like?
That's what he said to me.
I know. Is that what you said? Like, hey, you're the little man of the house. Like,
No, I didn't say that. I was just like, oh shit. Okay. Like, I was like, he's gonna cut me. Um, and then, she's like, oh, how are you guys getting along? I'm like, just great. You know, he was really cool. Yeah, and then like once he warmed up to me, like he's just a great kid too. Um,
yeah,
I used to always like mess with him where I'd be like, I would grab something he wanted and I would like Big Brother, like hunker over and be like, oh, you want this? You want this? And I thought like there's no way he could get it, right? Because he's like half my height.
yeah.
I'm bigger, I'm stronger. He jumps and climbs me, okay, like a tree and grabs what he wants. I was like smushing my head down and like just grabbing what he wanted. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, so I mean, kids are creative, man. Like I don't think we give them enough credit.
I love. So I was maybe because I didn't have like nobody believed in me like when I was younger, and maybe because I always like wanted to prove it. But I was a lot of times I was right about things, not all the time, and sometimes when I was wrong, I was wildly wrong. But a lot of times I feel like I was relatively good at things, and since then I've always had this like soft spot in my heart or like sympathy towards kids that were like in Avatar, they're a bunch of kids like take it like trying to save the world, like in like Stranger Things, where they made up their own land. Have you seen Stranger Things?
I gave up on it midway through season two.
Okay, so at least you saw season one. Yeah, season two
Yeah.
wasn't as strong, but season three is so good. It's like 9 out of 10 would recommend. Anyway, in season one, they're like running away from like these government baddies, and they made up street names, like they made up code names for the street. Instead of like
Okay.
Burt Street, it was like Left Street or whatever. Um, Kids are so creative, especially teens. Like they don't get enough credit, and I feel like this is addressed in certain comic books where Reed Richards creates like a future foundation for kids,
Okay.
like for problems, because kids will solve problems in a creative way that adults just wouldn't think to do. And I was like, oh, finally, that makes sense. Now it's in a comic book, but still, I feel like that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, if a show could tap into that, that's great. Um, I think also like having interesting like teenagers is also like really hard to do in shows. I think very very few movies or shows can do it right, and when they do, it can be extremely rewarding because it could become like a coming of age story.
Yeah,
Um, like I one of the things that kind of like a good example of that is like you ever watch like the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies?
yeah.
Like they actually, I feel like for the first time they made Peter Parker interesting,
I like
whereas
the
yeah,
um, Andrew Garfield ones. Like he was a good.
it was
Yeah,
nice
I
that they
like
brought them all together. It was
that was
heartwarming to see
that.
Andrew Garfield and
Whitfield.
Tobey Maguire like all share the screen. Like it was just really cool the way they did that.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
feels.
And then the other show that like I think does a fantastic, like a really remarkable job with like teenagers and everything is a show called Euphoria.
Haven't
Um,
seen it.
it is very, very good. I
Okay.
I think you just got to get past the first episode because the first episode it's kind of like, all right, this is kind of like whatever Degrassi with like whatever, like you just got to get past that first episode and then it gets really good and it gets better. Like it just
Okay.
like
Is it on
this.
Netflix?
It's on HBO Max,
Okay.
but I
Nice.
highly recommend it. It's really really good. Um, and me and it's actually funny because my boss now actually watches it, and so like we always, that's like the one thing we have in common. So we'll talk about the characters, and that conversation will last half an hour of us
Oh,
just
okay.
talking about the characters and like what happened and what was symbolic and it might not be your cup of tea, but I definitely was like blown away by it.
I'll take a look. I wrote it down. Euphoria. And now
Yeah,
I know that in like a day, I'm just gonna be like, why did I write down Euphoria? Like, was I on like
yeah.
LSD? Was I like, was I and it's just writing what
N-
I felt?
No, don't worry. Listen, that happens to me all the time where people recommend me stuff to watch and I just forget or that I mean to watch it, but then I never do.
No.
Yeah, if you ever have that where you're like, no, I'm gonna do this, and you mean it in the moment, like, no, I'll take your advice seriously, and then it never happens.
It's all the time. Like especially now where I get so much messages on like Twitter or like Instagram, like Facebook. I can't keep up. Um, and there's and a lot of people there. A lot of it is about, hey, have you seen? Is like check out this crypto or check out this game or check and some of it is shows too. And I do want to, but like here's like message requests for like Twitter, and these are like just the request, and I can't keep up. Like not including my normal messages, but I've already like responded to people. Um, so if I could take like even like a year off, I would probably have enough time to watch everything. Like if I just like played video games and I just watched what people recommended, I could probably do it. But I know it's just a never ending list. It's like books that like, oh, I want to read this book, and you just can't do it because you have like 50 books on your list.
Well, I mean, I think it's an endless list. there's always something else. If you try to watch it from now until the end of time, like you might still find, you might still be like, I'm still behind.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much content. There's so much stuff to watch, really. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Although I think that gap has kind of shortened with the pandemic. I've definitely had periods where I'm like, I think I've watched everything I like, you know?
I feel bad for kids nowadays that they have to catch up on decades of really good music and decades of really good movies and TV. Like when I feel like when we were younger in like the 90s, early 2000s, like I feel like movies weren't really great until like they were maybe like 70s, 80s, and even like well music I feel like the 50s, 60s are good too, but I well also movies didn't really exist before like 1930, so you have that.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't think there's definitely like some like I think from like the 1970s, like that's when it started to like movies started to become that's like
Awesome.
the eras I'll actually start watching movies.
Yeah.
I feel like the movies from the 50s and 40s that typically they're just too hard for me to relate to, and they're just
Also
not.
really boring.
Yeah, they're not as well made in my opinion. I think like 70s there was like that's when they started to try to make those like gritty cop movies and everything was darker and moodier, and it's like all right I could do. And then the 80s was, I mean, the hair,
Everyone spoke.
the action movies, the
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone, like
Yeah.
Scarface. There's all these great movies that started to kind of come out, and then the 90s was like the era that like all those action stars that I kind of grew up with, Van Damme and
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, all those, that they those are movies that are like really really close to my heart because I remember watching them and being like I want to be those guys,
Yeah.
like
Rambo,
did you ever
Rocky.
have that?
Yeah, 100 Rambo, Rocky, like anything Sylvester Stallone
Yeah.
was great. Universal Soldier,
Oh my
like it's
God.
just yeah,
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
I told people this the other day. When I was in the I talked to any medical personnel, even my commander, anyone that would listen, like, hey, any experimental, and I'm sure I'm on like some type of list. I'm like, this guy's fucking crazy. Like, don't let him anywhere near. Like, do you have any experimental surgeries? I need new legs. I need new knees, new hips. Like, I'll do whatever you want. I'll sign whatever you want. If it doesn't work, just heckin' kill me. Like, use me for parts. I don't care. Um, and I couldn't find anything. Like there was nothing that they would. Now, most likely it's because they're saved for like these, PJ type people, like Battlefield Airmen or like Navy SEALs or whatever, and they wouldn't waste it on me. But I tried.
You
There's
did
nothing.
try.
I did.
That's
I
all.
tried, tried to get some experimental play. Like I'll do
Why
it.
why does this sound like the origin story to Captain America? Like when he's like he he's like part of an experiment,
Yeah.
and like they turn him into, he comes out of the pod, he's like all shredded.
Oh God, he's so just yeah. Yeah. He got such good shape for those movies. Um, But yeah, I like so I've tried. But yeah, I love all those movies. I love some
Yeah.
really bad movies too. Like,
Oh, oh my God.
Have you seen Velocipaster?
No, but it sounds hilarious.
It's about a priest. It's about a pastor that he he has this recurring dream that he gets attacked by a velociraptor, and then he somehow like almost in like Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street, he pulls a claw out of the dream, and then every at night he'll turn into a velociraptor and he'll just eat bad people. It's the worst, one of the worst made movies I've ever seen. It must have had a budget of like $10,000, but it's hysterical.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I definitely like bad movies. I mean, there's some movies that I love that critics hate,
Yeah.
like Freddy Got Fingered
Yeah.
with Tom Green. I don't know if you remember
I,
that movie, but
I've seen it years back. I don't remember
it
too much of
was
it. I remember being outrageous.
it's so stupid. It's so abysmally stupid and it's so entertaining. I love it. I love that movie so hard because it's so dumb. but it has some components just that I think they hit a little bit closer to home for people.
Uh,
Like in that movie, Tom Green's like he's kind of like the favorite son, so the dad treats him better than his brother, even though his brother's more put together. It's just stupid stuff like that. And like Tom Green wants to be an animator in that movie, and his drawings are ridiculous. Like, um, dude, it's so. I mean, that was like Tom Green in his prime. Like those.
there was one movie that I thought was pretty underrated and also like incredibly hilariously racist, but like people like were like okay with it. I
Yeah.
forget the name of it. It came out over the last couple years. It's a Taika Waititi's in it, and he plays Hitler,
Oh.
and it's this kid that he's like real like he grows up in Nazi Germany, and the whole first like 2 minutes of the like he's in like this propaganda like it's Hitler Youth, and he's in the they play a German version of I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, and it's this kid going around town like the first 2 minutes just like Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler, like, and he really hates because of he's brought up in that he really hates Jewish people. But his mom, who I guess knew Jewish people back in the day, she helps hide um, this one Jewish girl. Um, and eventually, I won't give anything away, but it's a story about him becoming less racist. But they shove so much racist, like anti-Jewish person stuff in there. It's
Yeah.
hysterical, but it is. It's like how did they all not get canceled for that? It
I
was
mean, yeah. I mean, there's some movies, man, that they just they haven't uh, like according to like our times now, they probably haven't aged well, but like it doesn't matter to me. Like as long as I liked it, if I grew up with it, if I enjoyed it, like who cares, Like I'm not always keeping track of like what's, the most PC thing today. It's more of like, hey, what do I like? What did I find? What did I enjoy?
yeah.
And I think if you look hard enough, you could find something offensive in anything, you know?
Uh, um, I tend to like. I mean, some things that I think that was kind of okay, like Tropic Thunder. I don't know if you ever seen that.
I was actually thinking of Tropic Thunder. But then I thought that's not a bad movie. I kind of enjoy it. Like I think that movie's great.
Yeah, it is. It is good. It was fun. I saw that. God,
My
what was it? I saw it when it
dude,
came out, and then I've seen it since then.
yeah, they had like blackface, right? Like it was like,
Robert Downey Jr. Yeah,
which was, you know, I don't care. I enjoyed it. Like
yeah.
I don't know if it's Junior or the movie. I didn't care. I enjoyed it. I had a good time watching that movie. Um, but like, dude, my favorite part of that movie was when the director got blown up by like a tripwire, and they were like, I don't get it. Is this like a lesson? Is he trying to teach us something? They don't get it.
Shit.
They're like, okay, very funny. Nice effects. It's like they're just picking up scraps of him.
That was a good. They thought they were still in the movie for.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh,
There's some good parts in that movie.
yeah, I
But
enjoyed a lot.
never go full retard.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Oh,
It's fucking great.
we had some classics. So every now and then, we're on like my streams at night where we'll just talk about. I'm mostly crypto and NFTs and whatever. We get. I'll say an example. Oh, just like this, and it has to do with like a '90s cartoon or has to do with a movie. And everyone's like, how do you remember all these things? And it's not that I like just saw the movie once and that was it. Like back in the day, especially like, I didn't have like really good internet until I was in like high school, and even then I think it was still dial up. um so I would watch these movies over and over again, and I would watch like episodes of SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents and Hey Arnold. I'd watch them over and over again because like there was no internet, like we didn't have computers. It
Yeah,
wasn't it wasn't that. Have you gotten into any crypto or NFTs? Have you taken a look into that?
I really haven't. I really haven't looked at it at all. I know that's like a big part of your channel. That's like
Yeah.
a thing that you're really into and really knowledgeable about, but I just haven't gotten into it. I mean, um, it seems like, potentially a good investment if you know what you're doing. I don't, so I haven't like really thought about it.
I
But
mean, because you know
yeah,
psychology, you could probably tell where people would put their money, where people would um, like one like this or that. Oh, okay, well probably this. People would choose this because of X, Y, and Z. They'd play this video game because of X, Y, and Z.
it's a different ballpark, man. I think it's you're getting into like investing and business and stocks and all this other stuff. It's a whole different ball game. I'd be guessing.
Yeah,
I might have some maybe like some opinions about it, but I'm not going to pretend to be knowledgeable in it. I think definitely don't take advice from me on NFTs or things like that. I'm just I think you'd be more of the expert on that than me.
I've immersed myself in it. Like if there was any um like there's a line between like healthy obsession and like weird anime kid that's like doing this in the middle of class and Naruto running.
Yeah,
I've gone full Naruto. I've got like it's I every waking hour that I'm not making videos or live streaming or podcasting or at the gym, it's on like this NFT marketplace called veve, where I would go and just take a look at all the prices and try to find patterns, like going full Rayman and with deciding which ones are undervalued and overvalued. Um, so, and I don't get like this on just any old thing. Like Pokemon is something that like and certain types of video games. Um, but I knew this would be big, and it's not just like random like squiggles. It's not just like random like oh here's a drawing of like a squirrel head with like on like a deer. Like they have like Batman and like all the Disney stuff, and so like I have like Eddie Riso Batman, like all these cool little like 3D action figures. But it's instead of taking up space in the house, um, it's just on your phone. You can have an unlimited amount of them. So that is pretty cool. That is my take. Just download the VV app. It's really cool.
no, it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah,
And again, I think it's different because you're so immersed in it, so you're more knowledgeable in it, and there's I feel like if it's like if you're not really into it, it's not really worth it. I know
yeah.
that
I
sounds
mean,
like
if it's not your thing, then it's just not your thing.
I don't want to dip one foot in and just get. I feel like that's just like a good way to lose money,
It
because
definitely can be.
it just seems like a really great way to lose money, like unless you really know what you're doing. And even then, shit happens. It's unpredictable. So it's like, but I do get that there's like a rush that could come with it. If you like figured something out that no one else has,
Yeah,
and there's like, oh shit, like there's that oh shit moment, and
yeah,
then it's so rewarding because you figured out something that maybe most people haven't. I think I've seen you do stuff like that, like on Facebook, where you'll promote like, oh, you guys should really invest in this currency. This is so crazy. This is gonna blow up. Blah blah blah. So I thought that's cool. Um, but again, like I think there's not enough time in the day for me to like get as into it as you did.
yeah. It's
Um,
like impossible.
yeah, so because like it sounds like it's something that you're really heavily invested in, and if I'm not as heavily invested in, it's just like I don't want to half-ass it, because I'm gonna miss something.
Yeah,
I'm gonna not I'm not gonna know all the trends. I'm not gonna know all the
yeah.
values.
No, I agree.
I'm gonna miss patterns. I'm gonna miss things that maybe a guy like you wouldn't, you know.
Yeah, I mean the one of the things that I do like about it is that it's so like nobody knows about it yet. It's so early that you could pretty much like put all the NFTs like in pictures on like a dartboard, throw a dart, and whatever you land on, that'll probably go up in value over the next year or so. It's pretty much happened for most of them already. So you can kind of like set it and forget it, but it does make it easier if you like those things. I I really like Marvel superheroes, which they have, and some people really like Voltron, and some people really like Kripkins or like Disney, and they get those, and like Disney for me is like kind of like whatever. I'm just waiting for Pokemon for the most part. I have some Batman stuff, I have some Marvel stuff, but it does make it easier. If like, oh hey, this is a cool figurine, and oh look, it's got a physical counterpart. Like there are a couple of people that obsess over comics, and because they have a lot of comic books, so like, oh, this one is worth this much in real life, and I don't really have that specialized knowledge, so they go crazy on that, and it's pretty awesome. Um, but crypto in general, like Bitcoin is probably going to be Bitcoin and Ethereum are like digital gold and digital silver. That's just if I had like an extra 100 grand right now, I'd buy this Omi coin that's attached to the app. But Bitcoin and Ethereum is just there's only so much Bitcoin that could have. There's only so but the U.S. dollar is more and more every year. So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I
Street
mean,
talk as well said.
it's I went through a phase when I used to like gamble on sports.
Yeah,
Like that was like a thing I was into. Uh, but I was and I was I would bet on MMA fights. Because I was like I mean, I've been a big mixed martial arts fan for like years and years.
yeah,
So I would bet on that and I'd still lose, man. And that was the thing I knew. That was
yeah,
a sport I knew. Like I knew the vast majority of the roster. I knew who did what. I knew their histories. I knew who they beat, who they lost. Like I was obsessed with it. Um, and I still got it wrong.
yeah.
And I still had days where I'd lose money. I never bet anything that I couldn't afford to lose. Um, just because like I've seen people I know do that, and it's not a good look. Um,
It
but
does.
I've
It's not a
definitely
good feel.
it's not a good feel, but I've definitely been points in my life where like it was like, oh, if I win, this will really help out, and so there's added pressure. Um, but yeah, so like I feel like even if you know something very well, there's still whenever there's like you're involved in that marketplace, whether it's NFTs or Bitcoin or there's always the chance of it not going your way, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
no. I always tell people that any money you put in here can all go to zero at any moment.
hmm
That being
yeah,
said, like I've gone all in. Like I've gone all in a couple of times on different things. Like Pokemon cards, on Tesla, on Bitcoin, and now on this Omi. Um, which on the good days is really good because your investments can be up hundreds of thousands of dollars. But on the bad months, like I'm down like not at one point I was down like $600,000 at one point on this Omi coin, and like it's a long term hodl. Like the thesis of the company hadn't changed, so I was like, all right, I'll buy a little more. Um, but yeah, that's not a good feel, and not everyone. It's like when you're in a. It's like if you're studying fighting or if you're studying whatever. It's like okay, you have a good strategy until you get punched in the face, and it's like oh okay, and then it goes out the window. And
yeah,
a lot of people that are new here that like I mean I've been through 2020 where stock market's up here and then it crashes like 50%, and a lot of people that are new to crypto just haven't been through that, so people are losing like a lot of money, like, and they just sell and lock in those losses. I lose my mind because like why would you do that, but you know
yeah. No, I think everyone's got a different stomach for it, or I think some people also just I've heard people like set like a limit for how much they're willing to lose.
yeah,
And if they hit that mark, they're like, I can't afford to do it. I can't afford to lose more. Um, and then, for that reason they pull out, which who knows, maybe for them that's the right decision, because it's dangerous. You could lose whatever you put in,
Yeah.
which, the more you put in, it's high risk, high reward. I definitely understand the appeal of it, especially if you're trying to like figure something out and then there's like mass profits and you feel like, oh shit, like I'm the man, I fucking figured it out, I'm a genius, but it's just not worth. I think it's too much anxiety for me, to
Yeah.
be honest. Like I'm at a place now where I'm just more, I hate to say it, but I'm just more stable. Like I got a
Which
wife,
is
I got a
good.
kid, I got a
You,
job.
you, you grew as a person.
I don't need that level of that kind of excitement.
Yeah.
I'll bet every once in a while in a fight, and that's cool. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing like, oh, this will change the landscape
Yeah.
of my financial, stuff. But it's like, oh, this could be, maybe I could, buy
Take your wife
something.
out to dinner or
I could
something.
do, yeah, take the wife out to dinner, do something fun. It's more
Yeah.
like that. Um, I've recently gotten into like a new hobby. I don't know if you know. Um, Probably not because we don't
What
talk
hobby?
as frequent. I got into collecting miniatures and like building them,
Miniature like
like
Lego
uh
sets?
like Warhammer figures,
Okay.
or just like various miniature kits. Like I'll find them on like Etsy or whatever, and then like basically you have to like glue them together, and they're all like, the figurines look pretty badass, and um and then you prime them, and then you start painting them, and you just amass like your own dorky ass little army, which is like just fun to do. My friend from Texas, he started sending me. He's like the one who's like has really funny Facebook posts.
Yeah.
He's really artistic, so he started sending me pictures of him like handcrafting landscapes.
Mhm.
Like he created like a desert wasteland, on his workbench, and like it has all these like Fallout-esque miniature figures, like just kind of patrolling through like a robot uh wasteland, a robot graveyard. It's
So
fucking,
cool.
it's so cool, dude. It got me kind of jealous that he was like able to do that. And I was just like, well shit, man. I want to create my own wasteland. Fuck.
Yeah.
So I started like, and then I got some Warhammer miniatures because they make cool miniatures. Um, but I've kind of just expanded to like getting just cool miniatures if I just think they're cool and they'd be fun to paint.
Oh, good for you,
Because
man.
then I could just create like different scenarios or armies, or I don't have a lot of space at the moment, so I don't know where I'd put these things, but um, I'll figure it out.
You
So
need you're gonna need a bigger house. You're gonna need a room specifically for that.
I definitely would, or at least like just something where I could, be messy, like have paint and things like that. And the other part of it was like I just kind of thought like this would be a cool thing to kind of get into like with my son as he gets older. Like I think like the idea of like handcrafting stuff, it's great for fine motor skills,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, like it's just really cool. Like it's a fun activity, it's creative. Um, I'm sure my son will break all the miniatures. He'll just smash them together. It's just,
It, I
so I'll
mean,
have like, yeah,
what's like like I've thought about this before with like Pokemon cards. Like I've had this like head dream where like me and my friend Joe, which we started playing Pokemon back in the day, but we would like collect the cards,
yeah,
and it'd be like we in this head scenario, there's like this impending like doom, like this impending like missile alert, or like the sun has a solar flare like 20 minutes, and we play with these really mint cards that are worth like tens of thousands of dollars, and like that's what it's like. What's the point of having if playing with them? So I feel like for a kid, like what's the point of having these if you're not gonna like smash them and play them and like you know see that they're used.
yeah. I mean, I think that's just part of being a kid.
Yeah.
So I think if I, whenever I get to that point where I'm doing that with my son, I think I'm gonna have like miniatures that I'm willing to sacrifice. Like the soldiers who've been sacrificed in the great dumpster war of 2025, or whenever,
Yeah.
however old he'll be to do that.
Strap like a
Um,
firecracker to them.
Yeah,
Watch him
just
blow up.
you got to have expendable miniatures if you have a kid, especially if he's anything like me, he's going to destroy all of them. Like so, like I would throw those. I would probably like throw them up against the wall just to see what would happen. Like kids are animals, man. Like they're just they don't there's they don't understand anything. They're just gonna try something crazy because it's fun, you know. And I
Scientists.
yeah, they're just gonna they're like, oh, this seems like this will work out.
Yeah. I can picture that too. Like they're just scientists. Like, um, they're learning things. They're doing experiments, and like, oh, hey, you do this, and this happens.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned like the end of the world and like just playing Pokemon cards with your friend, you
Yeah.
know, because I've joked around with my friend who got me into miniatures that like I think that we're just gonna be like we should just go out in public and have a beer and just paint miniatures, you know, and just like
Yeah. It's a
um
good end of the world thing.
it is a good end of, yeah, just something that you just enjoy.
Yeah.
But
I haven't I this is that wasn't the first scenario that I've had. Like there's been other scenarios. I'll just daydream, and it's always about the end of the world. I don't know why, but it was about like me and I think you might have met him, this guy John Chan,
I think
where
I did
yeah,
once.
so I
Yeah.
would go over like his place back in the day, and we'd just like watch anime. Like in this like one head canon dream thing, I'd be like, it's like end of the world coming in like 30 minutes. Like, oh, any good animes on recently? And he'll be like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. You know, you want to watch? I'm like, yeah, sure. And like that's it.
I really don't know like what um I don't know what would go through people's heads if like you had 30 minutes and like the nuke was falling, you know, and there's nothing we could, you know, whatever, the comets coming. I can't even like fathom like how people would process that. If it
I
would
mean,
just be pure chaos or people would just go about their day or both.
I mean, 30 minutes. I mean, there's not much you can do. I mean, like even
Yeah.
if you took a bunch of like LSD, it wouldn't hit in 30 minutes. Like you'd need
Yeah.
something quicker. Um,
Yeah, I mean, or you know, whatever, an hour, you know, however long, you know, I don't know. I don't think I'd know what I'd do until I'm in that scenario, you know?
I have some Tequila, I have some Johnny Walker Blue. I would continue watching Modern Family. Like I'd be like, all right, Phil, you need to like hug your kid and like hug your wife. And I would just like I'd call Danielle, I'd be like, hey babe, I'm gonna die soon. So I will talk for a few minutes. I'll pour myself a glass, have a few laughs with Modern Family, and that's it. It's like you see Don't Look Up.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, kind of like at the end of the day, they're all just having dinner right before.
Yeah,
Spoilers if y'all haven't seen that, but
I
just
know.
continue there
Yeah.
here.
Well, I think everyone who wanted to see it saw it, you know?
That's your point.
I think. I mean, it went through like a whole phase where like people were like either loving it or hating it.
Um, if you had, let's say you had like a month left, but like only you knew. But you also had the ability, like if you told people that there was only 1 month left, like they would believe you. So you had to be really specific and choosy on who you told. Who would you tell and what would you do?
Who would I tell if I had a month to live?
Like if you knew the world was ending in a month based
Oh,
on Y and Z, and the people that you told would believe you, who would you tell and what would you do?
God, I don't know. I might
Because
keep
you're
that
right,
to
the
my
world would probably go into chaos. Like
if
there's
the
it,
world is gonna end anyway,
yeah,
you know, I don't know. I mean, that's not something I know what I would do with that information, you know,
yeah,
within this conversation. I don't know who I'd want to tell,
yeah.
you know.
Um,
Maybe I'd try to like get in touch with the president, you know.
okay,
You know, maybe I would try to be like, look, I can't do anything, but like maybe if I could get through enough people and, you know, get to this guy who's like got the resources to maybe do something.
yeah,
Um, you know, and if I had the ability to somehow make people believe me magically, you know, I think that's not the worst plan. Um, but if it's just one of those scenarios where it's like, no, like no matter what, the world is ending 100%. There's nothing, anything anyone could do. It's you're doomed. It's
yeah.
happening. It's gonna happen in a month. Um, shit, man. I don't know. I don't know who I tell.
Uh, well,
That's a tough question because if you tell someone and then they freak out and then they start telling people and mass panic.
yeah.
So I don't know who I tell. I don't even
I,
know if I tell my wife because I don't want her to be miserable,
would she
and
be miserable?
maybe, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like there's like increased apathy, it's like shit, like, what we just started, we just got a son and now he's gonna die, like,
That's a good. Yeah, that's a good point.
so
Um,
it's like, I think I would just keep it to myself.
Please tell me
Um,
because I want like a special stream. I want to go get heck the diet. I'm gonna go eat Taco Bell and pizza every
I,
day.
Randy, I wouldn't tell you got a whole freaking platform, man. That's like mass panic,
I
like,
wouldn't tell people. I would
I
just.
don't know. I'm not risking that. I don't need that anxiety. I'm dying alone with that knowledge, man.
All right, fair
You're
point.
probably gonna be like a big hit by then, and you're gonna be like, all right, guys, this just in. Phil told me that the world is fucking ending. They're all like, oh shit.
I so I've been pretty good with secrets, like whether it be from like the military or from secrets that I know from random companies about that type of deal with not telling people. The only one, and this wasn't really, this was one time in like 2019, me and a couple of old military buddies of mine went to the city, New York City, and we just got really drunk and we did a whole bunch of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and um like just classified stuff was being blurted out everywhere. It was it was awful. But outside of that, that was like the only time that had ever been, and it was with other people that had my security clearance, but we were just talking loudly, so like someone could have overheard. Um, but that's
I
about it. I'm pretty good with
I
secrets.
I think it happens, man. I mean, it's like one of those things where you have like a security clearance, you find out something really sensitive, and then you come home and like I don't know, like what if your wife wants to talk to you? I know that you're supposed to technically not talk about it, but how many people really are like, no, I'm not going to talk about anything, you know? Um,
I
like I
imagine
said,
some people do.
I'm sure there are, but I'm sure there's other people who are like, it's a bullshit policy, like, I'm your wife, I'm your husband, like we could, because I think it gets muddy once you get into personal relationships,
Yeah,
I think you're just
I never
like,
do.
you know,
I was one of those like goody two shoes. I never told any of my girlfriends anything because it's like God forbid, like which of course in most relationships that they do end. You know, God
yeah.
forbid they decided to they end and they end poorly. Not that they any of them have, but if they did and they decided, oh hey, I could use this info and really heck me up, it's like oh, you know,
That's smart. Yeah, there's definitely I that makes a lot more sense too, because it's you're at a point where that this might not be forever. That this could be one of many or one of whatever. And if things go badly, then people sometimes want revenge. You don't find that out until later on, when things are when they go from good to bad.
yeah,
But
bad.
I turned to my wife. I've told her like on numerous occasions, like, yeah, like if I was like a hitman or something like that, or involved in anything like that, I would never tell you because you are so bad at like you cannot if like if you were questioned by a police officer, you would fold. And not because you don't love me, not because you want to like jeopardize me, but because you get anxious and you talk. Okay,
Yeah,
and when you get anxious and you talk, that like like those criminals who get busted because their woman talks, or says too many things,
yeah,
or she like rants, she's like not thinking and like panics. And um, I think so. I've had that conversation with her. It's like, listen, like, it would be to protect you. It would be to protect me.
yeah.
My wife is an amazing woman. She's a gem of a person. She's my rock. But I wouldn't tell her if I was like doing something shady like that because if she ever were to be questioned by like an authority figure, I think she would panic. It would make her uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, so I've like shot the shit with her. You know, she like mocks being upset, but she knows she's not disappointed with me.
Yeah. No, I've had so obviously nothing classified. Talked about Danielle, but we've had this thing like, hey, we'd be like 100% honest with each other. I was like, okay, so we are. Sometimes I guess me into trouble, but most times like, no, no, I need to know. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Um, but it's good because I do live a relatively public life, so it's good to like keep her in the loop on certain things.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a public person, so even this has been like definitely outside like my normal routine. Like I'm not someone who uh like posts a lot on Facebook or makes videos or anything like that. Uh, but I'm definitely accustomed to like talking because I do it so frequently. Like with
Yeah,
clients, it's just part of the job, you know, or just when years of school where you have to do a presentation, you're
yeah.
just like desensitized from it. And
I um I never had. Well, I never really went to. Well, I went to one semester of Nassau Community College when I just got out of the military. There was no like giant presentations to do or anything. Most of it was just I had a job in sales afterwards, and I just got used to talking on the phone. I was like, okay, I can talk. So I decided to talk on camera, and it was like god awful at first. It was just I used to print like when I would talk about Pokemon sales data. So what I would do is I would print out like a script and I would read it, and I would like occasionally look at the camera and then look back and read like another paragraph and then look back. It was not good at all. It was quite embarrassing.
no, I mean, I think it makes sense too, because I think it's also one of those things where if you're not used to speaking, you know, in a public format, I think you'll go back and be like, man, I was terrible when I started, you
Yeah.
know, and especially when you're younger, when you're still trying to like your brain is still developing, you're still trying to like figure out how to actually verbally express your thoughts and feelings in a way that's coherent and clear. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't do that when I was fucking 18. Are you crazy? Like I barely understood what I was going through.
Yeah.
Um, there's just been so many instances where like I felt something and I didn't know how to express it, you know, and you know, so when you're talking about like that job in sales where you're like looking at the script and then looking at the person and
Oh no, I
um
meant like YouTube. The job at sales, it was just like over the phone, so that was
okay,
easy. But
you're
when I
talking
was
about
starting on YouTube,
your YouTube channel, you'd have like a script.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's adorable.
I would print it out and I'd be like, oh well, this Charizard first edition PSA 9 sold for $20,000. Oh, new records, it would be so corny. It would be so. Oh God, it's so cringy. I should probably put them all in private now. It's so
You know
bad.
what? Listen, you know what? I say keep it out because it's like it's your transformation. Hey,
Yeah.
my phone's about to die. Just letting you
Oh
know.
yes, yes. All right, go, go.
It's I've got 2 seconds, so it's about
All
to.
right. I
Yeah.
love you, Phil. I'll
Love you
talk to you
too, man.
later.
Talk
All
to
right,
you
peace.
later, man.
Bye.
All
Meow,
right,
meow,
bye.
meow.